Really, I think understanding people is where any great CX strategy should start. Understanding your customers, understanding what their needs are, understanding what they are and aren't getting today.
DBX is a production by Acuerdo, the digital orchestration agency for customer experience. To learn more, visit acuerdo.io. This episode is sponsored by NICE CX1, the Gartner Magic Quadrant leader of cloud contact center solutions. I'm your host and co-founder of Acuerdo, Kyle Burt, and I'm joined by my co-host, co-founder, Frank Rogers. Let's dig in.
For all of our audience, if you don't know David Collyer, David is the VP of Global Customer Experience at ECI, but he didn't start there. He cut his teeth on industry giants like Sun Microsystems, AOL, Time Warner, and eBay, just to name a few. But on his rise to prominence, he became a people leader, as by his VP status, and then a thought leader on really client services and customer experience with companies like GSI Commerce, Reach Local, Intel Security, and other technologies or One Technologies. But when it comes to the alignment of people, process, and technology around improving CX, this guy can talk shop. That's what we're going to do right now. David, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you both.
Welcome, David. Would you mind filling in any gaps from that intro? What would we miss here?
It was pretty comprehensive. It certainly has been on kind of the customer experience and services side pretty much my entire career. Arriving here at ECI about 4 years ago, and we've, really gone into full throttle on redesigning and reinventing the customer experience at ECI, and we've really been proud of the results we've gotten.
And can you tell us a little synopsis of ECI, like what ECI does, what you guys are known for, and where you guys fit in the market?
You bet. So we are a ERP software company that caters to the small and medium-sized business segment. We're in several different verticals, manufacturing, lumber, building and construction, field services. So we're in several different verticals. And really our advantage and our differentiator is that we have deep industry knowledge and expertise in our verticals that we serve, things that our, other companies really just can't really compete with. Most of our employees are come out of that industry that we hired, and we do that specifically so that we can retain that knowledge and expertise so that as we serve our customers, we're not guessing at their business. We have true experts on our side that really know what is important for the customer and how we can develop and design our ERPs to serve them better.
Yeah, absolutely. So, ECI seems like they're blowing up right now. Could you help us unpack the reason behind that growth, how it's impacting your CX team, touch on headcount, locations, growth, vision for next?
You bet. So I think one of the big advantages that we have is we've got a very clearly, stated and aligned business strategy, and we've really done a great job at ECI at creating a culture of values that we start every presentation at ECI with our core values. We also are very clear on our goals. We repeat those through the year many times, and we really align from the top down on everything that we do, what our strategies for the year are, what are the areas that we're going to really focus on. As we talk about growth, we really have three big growth strategies. We've got organic growth, which is a big strategy for us, is just acquiring more customers on our ERPs. We also are focused on geographic expansion. And so we have several of our products that, maybe started in one geography and we're expanding those into other geographies. And then we also grow significantly through acquisition. So we acquire several companies every year and integrate those companies in with our business and in with our divisions. And so we've got a very strong growth strategy with several different mechanisms that we've diversified in that strategy so that, we can continue to keep up the growth that we've had. As far as employees are concerned, we've got over 1,000 employees. We are global. We've got several offices here in the U.S. We've got offices in Europe, big hubs in the UK and in the Netherlands. We've got also offices in Australia. We've got people in Singapore. We've got people all, in APAC as well. And so, we truly are global, and we're expanding even further, our reach even further every year.
That's awesome. One of the things that I see that's a little bit different about your company is that there are businesses out there that say, like we have this widget, and you can buy it in green, and we sell it to this vertical. Like the fact that you're buying all these diverse organizations and bringing them underneath your umbrella, that's got to impact like how you like rearticulate CX across these businesses.
It certainly does. We pride ourselves on buying businesses that are already very successful with their customers and have a very good reputation. And so we target those specifically. But anytime you bring another company in and kind of integrate things, there's a lot of work to do around culture. I mean, that's the first thing, really, is getting everybody aligned on the vision, on the the values, on kind of who we are as a company, and getting them bought into that. And ECI does a very good job of that. And I think pretty much every time we purchase a company, they're excited about that vision and excited about the values that we hold. And then obviously then it comes down to the strategy around how we want to apply our version and our brand of CX. And, really working with them to deeply understand why we are doing what we are doing, show them the results that we've been able to get, and really, get them really as part of that strategy, not, really something that we just say, this is the way we do it, you're going to come in and do it that way. We're also very open to say, we don't know everything. And we're limiting it ourselves if we think that we know everything. So we do a thorough analysis of, well, how do you do things? And we take a look at that, and pretty much every acquisition we make, I pull little bits and pieces out of what they've done that have proven very successful and are very good with their customers that we may not be doing. And we sprinkle some of that in to kind of what we've already created. And so we're in a constant evolution and a constant improvement in what we're doing as from a customer experience standpoint.
So what you're saying, David, is that you're never there.
Never there.
Never
we won't ever be there. If the industry and our business and the world stayed static, then maybe we could at some point, but it never does. And so we will constantly be evolving.
You've got to celebrate quickly and keep on moving. Is that part of the culture, even inside of CX, that you're building? Is that like the embracing of a process more than a destination?
It absolutely is. We talk about all that all the time on my leadership team is, look, we're all about the concept of micro excellence and marginal gains of, we just want to continually add improvements, small incremental improvements. And at some point as you're climbing the mountain, and, you can look back and realize that you've made some big changes and some big things have happened, even though it kind of felt like one step at a time. And that's kind of how we've approached this as just a constant evolution and a constant kind of pursuit of perfection. We know that's kind of like in American football terms, the concept of half the distance to the goal, right? You may never get to perfect, but we're always going to be pursuing it. We're always going to be pushing that envelope.
Crazy. So David, 4 years ago, right, you joined ECI. ECI did not have a CX strategy, for lack of better words. Their CX strategy was pretty much non-existent. So how do you go from that to where you guys are now? Like, what do you start in that? When you started 4 years ago, how do you start to even unpack what a CX strategy could be or should be?
Yeah. So, when I first arrived here, we actually had some CX strategies, but we had several of them in the different divisions that were kind of doing their own thing. There was no real kind of coordinated effort across the organizations and across the company to be able to do that. And so some of these divisions were doing some really great stuff, but none of the other divisions were leveraging it and weren't able to kind of take that and apply it to their business. And so the approach that I took is I knew the important thing, first of all, was to get internal support for the vision. And so really, my first job was, as a CX leader, 80% of your job is sales. It really is really getting people to understand what you're trying to do, understand the changes you want to make, understand, kind of where we are today, what is the transformation we want to go through, and what are the expected results that we'll get afterwards. And really get them to buy into that and get behind it. And, that's a challenge when you're going into a business and, you've got other people that are leading these functions within their divisions at the time. And you have to convince them to give me a bunch of people and let me take this over. And that's always a big challenge. Now, the great news about ECI is I think that pretty much every leader that we have is more interested in what's good for the business than what's good for them and their particular area of the company. And so, I have a really great group of leaders that I work with in the divisions and in other functional groups within the company that are really able to look at things. Well, what's the benefit for the business? And so as we went through and socialized it, there were all obvious concerns. I mean, everybody has some concerns, and everybody has a different opinion on what's going to work, what's not going to work. My customers are different. My products are different. That won't work over here. This won't work over there. And when we got down to the fact that, look, agreed that all of those things are true. Every bit of those things are true. But when we look at it from what's important to a customer, that's consistent across all of your customers. So if we stop looking at about, from a product standpoint or from, how these customers are or how those customers are, they all want the same thing. They want to know that we're going to respond quickly. They want to know that, when they have an interaction with us, we're going to speak their language. We're going to be very respectful. We're going to focus on that interaction. We're going to listen. We're going to understand what their issues are. Those are the things that are important, and that's universal for all customers. And so as we started getting into those discussions and really talking about what are we going to do specifically to create that capability within our business that can really cater to the customer instead of the operations, then we're going to see some dramatic impacts from that, and it'll be very positive. And a lot of the problems that we have today are just going to go away, because as customers start becoming advocates for you and customers start becoming promoters for you, a lot of the issues that we see today that we have with our customers just disappear and go away. And so really that was the strategy. Is first we had to get that internal support, because we knew if we didn't have that, if we don't have the support from the current leadership, then there's no way we'll be successful in kind of applying this new strategy.
When you talk about that kind of like rally around the customer, that's really what you're saying. You're like, hey, listen, all things being equal, the product and everything else, like we focus on the customer, then it seems like the byproduct of that particular approach is that maybe some of the political items and they start to fall away,
right.
And they become, in the light that's shown on that from the CX side, it's maybe galvanizing around culture as well. Can you speak to that?
You bet. And that's one of the great things I love about ECI is everybody is fanatic about the customer. But as you all know, a lot of times we kind of put our heads down and we push forward in the name of the customer before we really understand what the customer wants or what's important to them. And so we end up spinning our wheels, and sometimes it's even counterproductive to what we're actually trying to accomplish. And so one of the first things that we did is we really doubled down on listening to the customer through surveys. And so we really put a focus on our NPS. We put a focus on our CSAT. We kind of redesigned and re-architected that strategy. And we started getting some really great insights. And so essentially what we did is we said, all right, we're going to take a look at all of the feedback we get from our customers. We're going to categorize it. And what are the themes that we hear are most prominent negative from our customers? What are the negative things we hear? And then also, what are the positive things we're hearing from our customers? And let's reinforce those positive things and make those kind of institutionalized. And then let's take a look at things that are negative, and let's prioritize those by, number one, how often we're hearing it, and number two, how big of an impact is it for the customers. And then let's just start at the top of the list, and let's create initiatives to knock this one off the list, knock the next one off the list, knock the next one off the list. And we went through that evolution, and as we went through that evolution, and we got good buy-in from the divisions, because we knew that, look, some of this is going to be services related, some of it's going to be kind of their interactions with us, and some of it's going to be product related, things they don't like about the product or things they do like about the product, whatever. We've got to make this information transparent across the entire organization. So we basically integrated our customer insights platform with our CRM, so that, and everybody has access to our CRM, all the salespeople, the leaders, everybody has access to that customer information in our system. And right on each customer record, both at the company level and at the individual contact level within the CRM, it has a tabulation of their NPS and CSAT, their most recent one, the year-to-date total, and the all-time total, so we can see the progression or regression of those scores by the company and individual. And it just gave us insights into what our customers are thinking about us. And it really, we also created reports that are sent out to the senior leadership of the whole company. So every once a week, they get a summary of all of the responses, including the comments that the customers give. And that really created awareness. And so as we went to the division, say, look, this is a big problem for our customers, we need to fix it. They say, yep, we see it, we're aligned, let's go fix it. And we were able to really kind of work across, we wanted to start with our garden first, kind of the areas that were under my responsibility first. And then we reached out across the aisle to start working with the divisions. And it's been a very collaborative effort.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How do you quantify impact? Like, how do you go through that process? Like, a lot of the times the feedback that you get from a customer is very qualitative, even though you may have gated that. And I understand the process of prioritization around it. And that probably has a lot to do with like what you can do within your systems, or what you have to do around a culture or a policy. It could impact product. There's a lot of different ways that this plays out. But, ultimately when you go to, if you're requiring extra funding or requiring a change, what is the process for gaining consensus and approval around taking the actions you want to take? Do you have to put together a number that says, I think we're going to get X lift, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's a couple of different things we look at with regard to that. Obviously, we look at just the raw CSAT and NPS improvements, right? So, we've done about a 10 percentage point improvement on CSAT over the last couple of years, and we've done about almost a 50 point improvement on NPS on average in the last couple of years. And so we look at those numbers, and those numbers don't, those are also they're quantitative, but it's from a really a customer experience standpoint, not necessarily a financial standpoint. So
that's right.
So that's kind of what we look at there. Now, what we do is we take a look at what is the correlation between increase in NPS, increase in CSAT, and increase in revenue and EBITDA within each of the products and each of the divisions, and we find a correlation between those two things. And part of the problem that you have in creating a qualitative correlation is there are so many different variables, right? It could be lower resistance during the sales process because of an improved reputation in the industry. We used to get a lot of customers that would say, we've heard terrible things about your support, so we don't want to buy from you because we went to this user forum and they said support was terrible and we need great support. Those types of things. We don't hear any of that anymore. And we see a correlating higher win rate in our sales cycles. So we believe that a portion of that, not all of it, but we do believe that definitely our improved reputation, our improved CSAT and NPS has definitely had an impact on our ability to win in competitive environments. It's now becoming a competitive differentiator for us, where before our salespeople had to do whatever they could to overcome those objections. And now our sales teams are taking actual data. Our marketing teams put some data together about how world-class our services are now. And they actually use that as kind of a beachhead during the sales process now. And as a reason to choose the ECI over our competitors. So, we see a difference in that, and, sales win rates, we see a difference in just organic growth with our customers. we're in the process of moving, as much as possible to a subscription model. And so we're looking at things like churn rates. We're looking at things like average tenure of our customers or lifetime value of our customers. And every single one of those numbers are improving. And we definitely know that NPS and CSAT and just that CX focus is having a significant impact on that.
So would you say, that's awesome. I mean, would you say, like, in summary to that statement, that the level of your CX, like the level of distinguishability of your CX, how either good or bad, right? If that is a great CX, that turns into that competitive advantage for you versus another company that doesn't have that great CX, right? So that could be like the single most important factor for an advantage over one company over another.
Absolutely. And with our team, the mantra that we use is we want services to be the reason that customers choose and stay with ECI. We want to really make it compelling because they know they're going to be taken great care of. And once they experience that great service, they're going to continue to want to stay with us because they know that we give them better service than they've had anywhere else. So and if you look at a subscription model, that's very important because retention is a big part of your revenue stream in a subscription model.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're looking at like what you're doing right now around, if you just look at like your existing operations, but as you go out to acquire new companies, David, are you getting involved in that discussion? Is your M&A team coming to you and saying, look at this organization over here, if we bring this into our fold, and is there a way for them to quantify anticipated lift from being underneath your tutelage here around CX?
Absolutely. That's a huge part of what we do during our diligence process. As we're looking at prospective companies to purchase, we actually go through a significant exercise around, synergies and those types of things. And do quantify. And typically when we purchase a company, we have goals as far as we think we can, take this company and do this much better with it. And each of us as leaders have kind of goals as to what we think that's going to be. And so we absolutely go through that exercise during the diligence. All right, we have a great M&A team that include us. I'm on calls with the prospective companies that we're looking at to kind of go through all of their information, their metrics, and ask about their models and their strategies and all those other kinds of things before we decide to purchase the company.
Gotcha. And is part of that process also evaluating their technologies that they have and how there's a migration process, right? On these acquisitions of their data and everything else, how you're going to normalize that. Is that a part of your kind of investigation as well?
It is. Not my specific, but we have our CTO and we have our chief legal counsel. We have our chief revenue officer. We have each of those leaders for those organizations doing a similar exercise that I do with the services organizations that they do with their equivalent organizations in those prospective companies. And so it's a very coordinated kind of team focused effort.
There's an interesting pull and pull here, or push and pull with respect to like your role in the organization, because the organization's bringing deals to the table that's saying, hey, David, jump in here and rally this into the fold. And then there's another side that says, hey, David, ramp up your organization so that you can drive more business for us, right? So that you have both of these things. When you sit down and plan out, you say like the next 2 years, the next 3 years, and you look at your business right now, like how do you look at that? Like 12 months, 24, how does the size of your organization grow?
The organization grows significantly, every year. Obviously, we don't really grow significantly through our organic business because we're at a point right now in our evolution where we are continuing to provide efficiencies, productivity gains, those types of things, to where we're able to provide an exceptional level of service with less effort or less people through a combination of not just our internal processes and systems and tools, but also working with the product groups and saying, look, 10% of our call volume is because of this thing, that if we had this widget in the product and we
Right.
developed that, your cost for support would drop by about 10%. So it's worth the development effort in that. So we work with our product teams. And so we really haven't grown people-wise much year over year organically. Where we get our growth is through our acquisitions and the teams we acquire. And also our geographic expansion. Obviously, there's an investment in that as we take a new product into a new geography where we don't have anybody there. There's an investment to have to prepare and then ramp things up at that point. So we do grow somewhat during that as well. But also, we just when we go through these synergy activities, I don't look to say we can do with less people. I look to say we can grow without adding much more people. And so we typically don't, through these acquisitions, let people go. We bring the teams over, and then as the business grows, we just don't have to add as many people. And that's really kind of our strategy. But we do grow, obviously, through that. We probably grow, I don't know, about 20% a year on an average year. Some years are a little more, some years are a little less, depending on the size of the deals and how many companies we acquire and those types of things. But we grow significantly every year through all of that.
Interesting.
But we also become a lot more efficient every year too. So we're doing a lot more we look at things on kind of the level of a few different ways, but kind of cases per agent per month. And our cases per agent per month obviously is improving and growing. Now, COVID year kind of dropped simply because our volumes dropped because, our customers weren't doing as much with support at the beginning of COVID. And we made a decision. We're going to retain all of our people. We're not going to go through any layoffs. We're going to actually turn some of their available bandwidth towards doing improvement activities. So creating more knowledge, doing more cross-training, doing some of these things that are going to set us up for success and improve our capabilities as we come out of COVID. And we're absolutely seeing that now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you're really just talking about optimization. And as you optimize across this group here, and you're talking about COVID and we're all anticipating, taking off the COVID coat and moving forward, how does that leave your organization? Are you saying, hey, everybody back in the bus? Or are you like, hey, are you more of this, hybrid environment where people will have options? Like you'll have various different groups of people that choose to opt in, people that choose to opt out, flex. How does that work?
Well, the good news is we have, as a services organization, we obviously use a lot of metrics to manage what we do and try to scale things. And so we've got a really good idea of how people perform in different environments. And so what we want to do, and our goal is to put people in a role and an environment where they can really shine and really do their best work. And so, that's one of our philosophies from a role standpoint. We've got different roles on the team, and we try to place people in roles where their skill set is a good match for that role and will make them successful. We do the same thing from a location standpoint. So we went 100% remote with COVID, and we did that for over a year now. And so we've got a ton of data on, well, who are the people that thrive in a remote environment, thrive at home, really do well? Who are the people that really struggle when they're not in a collaborative, in-person environment and really doing well? And so we've kind of segmented our teams into, trying to get them in an environment where they can perform the best. They can be the happiest. They can, have the best experience with their jobs. And so we are a lot more flexible than we were prior to COVID as far as that's concerned. And we're really trying to place people. So the people that are really performing, better or the same and have circumstances and situations where they prefer to work at home or they want to work at home, then we try to accommodate that. For people that really struggle at home, we try to get them in an environment where they can get the help that they need. They can get, be close to their lead. They can be close to senior people that can help them, elevate their, what they do. Because we also believe that a lot of job satisfaction is how successful you are in that job. My experience is not too many people enjoy being the lowest performer on a team. I think generally human nature is you want to do well. Most people want to do well. And so we find that most of our team members, when they're more productive, when they're at a higher level, when they're performing at a higher level, they have a lot better job satisfaction, even if they would rather work at home. If they're doing better at their job, they have more satisfaction.
So when you look at, we're talking about the employee experience right now. You're talking about like cultivating a culture of CX, right? How you came into this. I think you said that there was like maybe 3 agents or 300 agents, now 500 agents, right? So you've grown in that 4 years. How do you, as you grow this and as you acquire these new companies, like how do you maintain that CX culture that you're trying to build?
So that's a great question, and I think there's a few different ways. Number one, we believe in the carrot, and so we revamped and redid our reward and recognition program last year, and so we've really focused on providing incentives and recognition for people that just do great for our customers. And the hard part is right now, every quarter, we've got a bunch of people that have like 100% CSAT. Like for the whole quarter, they will get perfect CSAT scores. I mean, we've got like 20 people last quarter that got perfect. And so really then we have to break down and say, well, we don't really want to just like give half the organization a recognition for CSAT when there's some people that really have stood out above and beyond. And so then we start looking at, well, how many responses did they get? The more responses, the more impressive it is that they got 100. We've got people that have, 80, 90 responses and they're 100% CSAT. So we want to do that. We want to look at, so we have to look at some other things, but we give CSAT awards and recognition. We also make CSAT a part of their balanced scorecard. And it actually is it's the element on the scorecard that has the heaviest weighting. And so the easiest way for somebody to bring their balanced scorecard scores up is to bring their CSAT scores up. And when they do that, then it's great. We talk on a regular basis and coach on a regular basis in our town halls, in our leadership meetings and everything else about what are some strategies to engage with the customer better. So we also provide a bunch of training for our people, and we give them combination of required training and elective training. And a lot of our required training is just around those soft skills, around the customer interactions, around what's important to the customer, and continuing to reemphasize how important that is. And we also use a lot of just examples. We actually have some of our agents create videos. So we take some of our best performing agents in different areas, and have them create little videos, video vignettes that we send out to the rest of the organization for them, saying, hey, this is how I get great results in this area. This is what I do. This is how I do it. And they'll go through and talk to it. They'll show sometimes in the system if they're, if that's kind of the area that they're the best in. And so we've got a lot of great employees that give tips and tricks to the rest of the employee base. And I think that's so much more powerful than if we as leaders go and say, do this and this and this. It's when they see somebody who's actually doing it and has been doing it for a long time and it's one of their peers. I think that's a lot more impactful than if we were to give it to them.
That's huge. You have a living knowledge base, so
Exactly.
That's constantly growing.
Yeah.
That's very huge.
Kyle, there's also kind of like there's like a personal branding in there as well, right? Yeah. I mean, for people inside that organization, it's one thing to say, hey, this person was raised up by the organization, but then for them to be out there, almost like as an internal thought leader, kind of intrapreneurial kind of, that's what it kind of invokes for me, is just that, people taking that extra step and putting their own personal brand on it. I think I haven't heard that before in too many cases. This is very unique.
Yeah, and we see it as a great growth opportunity for the people doing the videos as well, because we challenge all of our people to be the CEO of their own role. So, we don't want you to have to ask permission to do everything in your job. We want you to think like a CEO thinks and say, look, this is my business. These are my customers. This customer is calling in. I have to make the decision on how to take care of them in the best way. And so, we get a lot of those thought leaders out of the organization who are applying that mindset to be able to do these videos. And it's great recognition for them too, because I think it feels really good for them when we ask them, to do this for the organization because they're outstanding at it. It's a real good morale boost for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Awesome.
Question for you, David. Like over the last 4 years, or even recently, what would you say has been the most challenging thing for you as it relates to building out and maintaining the CX structure here?
I think the most challenging thing is staying vigilant and focused. I think that's the thing, because we like to veer as we get into this thing. We established this, and the way we built this all was on this kind of customer journey. So we got in a room, we said, okay, I want everybody to forget what company you work for. I want you to forget that you've been doing this job for how many ever years, and you're now a customer. And I took them through one of my favorites, because I've had some bad experiences with my home internet service. So I took them through this role play of, okay, imagine you are at home and you're getting new internet service installed, and you picked a new internet company. What is the experience you want as a consumer, from the very beginning, for all the way from how do I find how to contact them? Like, I have a problem, or I need to schedule it. Like, how do I even find the phone number? How do I find who I want? So we walked through, and it was interesting at the very beginning. We'd go through, well, I would want this, and then we'd get somebody on the leadership team say, well, we can't do that. We this, and we had to stop everybody and say, it doesn't matter. Forget what we can or can't do today. We're talking about what is the optimal experience for you, because you're the customer now. You're not the manager of this team or the director of that team. You're now a consumer. Okay. So I want you to get in that mindset and forget about what we can or can't do. Our job is to design the best customer experience and then figure out how to operationalize that. And so we went through that whole process, and I saw it get easier and easier as the day went on. People started getting that mindset better, because we kept stopping them every time they would say, well, we tried that before and that didn't work. They stop. We're talking again, just, you're the customer. What do you want? And so we got through that whole exercise, and we really used that as the foundation of designing our structure. But as you implement that and you start executing that, your teams obviously start falling back on, well, what's easiest operationally for us to do? Well, if we did this, that would just be easier for our teams, and it would be easier to do this, that, and the other. And we always have to keep going back to, but is that optimal for the customer? Is that, as a customer, is that what you would want to happen? And so staying vigilant to that, because we get kind of lazy sometimes and fall into that, because we want things to be easier for everybody. And, we have to have a great employee experience. And so we just have to keep reiterating to our teams that, look, your job as leaders is to figure out how to provide this optimal customer experience and operationalize that in a way that our team members get it. They understand the whys behind it. They understand why we're doing it. Every one of our people want to provide an outstanding customer experience to our customers. If they don't understand why we're doing this, then you're not going to get on board with it. So we have to continually reemphasize, communicate. We get lazy sometimes and don't do a very good job. And then, of course, every time we do that, then, something doesn't go the way we wanted it to go. And then we have to reset back and say, okay, we lost sight there for a minute on that customer experience. Let's reset, refocus on that, and stay vigilant. So I think that's probably the most challenging part, is just staying rigorously focused on that.
Oh yeah. Thanks for sharing that, David. You brought something up in that, and I couldn't help to think: do you see CX and EX, like customer experience and employee experience? Do you see them as almost somewhat competing priorities?
Oh, heavens no! They are so interrelated. You can't ever get where you want to with one if you don't do the other. And I've seen it on both sides. I've seen it to where, we've ignored the employee experience, and the customers can hear that. And we even have, employees will say stuff to them like, well, I can't do that. My management won't let me do that. And, you can hear it in their voices. You can hear what they say. And, you've got 500 people. You can't control everything that every one of those 500 people say. And if they're disgruntled, it will come across. And so, of course, as a customer, is that what you want to hear? That's not a great experience when you hear the employee complaining about their management and about they can or can't do this or the other. When you have an employee that's really, really bought into it, and they've got and they love where they work and they're excited about where they work, that comes across to the customer too in a good way. And the cut can hear it, and they know that you work there. And I've seen the converse where, we've done some things that we didn't do a good enough job communicating. And so I'll give you a for instance, is metrics. We have employee surveys that we do as well. And we started getting a bunch of employees that were saying, it seems like we're just now focused on numbers and nobody cares about the customer anymore. Nobody cares. And they were really upset about it. And it prompted us to have a communication with them to go back to kind of we created part of what we do is we've created outcomes that we're aligned with. And we also created the seven things that are important to a customer. And so it prompted us to say, we didn't do a good enough job communicating to our people why we're measuring, why metrics are important. They think it's so that we can kind of crack the whip and make sure that they're working harder. And that is 180 degrees from what the intent of the metrics are. We've got to communicate the intent of the metrics. So we had a meeting with them and let's talk about the metrics. Let's talk about CSAT. What is CSAT? Let's look at the 7 things that are important to a customer. And let's look at all of the key metrics that we look at that we're really pushing you guys on. Those are ways to measure if we're doing those things that are important to the customer. And so we went through line by line. For this one, the first one, which is, are we responding quickly to their requests? Well, we have our average speed of answer. We have our response time on our emails and our cases. Yeah, those are metrics and numbers, but that's telling us if we're providing a great experience to the customer. So we want to link the metrics to that customer experience. And when we did that, we started seeing a whole lot less of that because they started getting, they're measuring this because that's the only way we know if we're succeeding in providing a great customer experience. And so we see that our people are not happy if we're not providing a good customer experience, because not only do they want that, but they also get more disgruntled customers calling, more upset customers calling. That's harder for them in their job. So they're really just so tightly interwoven together. You've got to, you can't get where you want with one if you don't take care of the other.
I love it. I love it. I mean, what you're talking about is an area that Kyle and I have talked about at Acuerdo, which we call the space in between. And, we work so much on, helping people get people to the dance, essentially. The whole aspect of conversion, amplifying engagement is really to create the space for that interaction. But then, you get people to that interaction, and then what is that experience? Does it reflect ultimately what marketing has said you're going to experience? Does it reflect what the salesperson said that you will get when you purchase this product? Like all these expectations that have been set out there. And to the credit of, I think the culture that you've created, your people have pushed back. And even though your best intentions around something else, like they were feeling it differently, like everything really is about like this grand scheme of reconciliation, isn't it, David?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that's what I love so much about the feedback we get from our employees, because they catch us on stuff when we become lazy. They'll catch us on it, and it prompts us to really become more vigilant at those things. And I love all of our people. I love their honesty. I love the feedback we get from them, because we as leaders, just as much as they as employees, need coaching. And they coach us just as much as we coach them. It's great.
Awesome. Well, Dave, we're about to close this out. We have a few more questions here. I want to get a little personal with you here. What's life like at home? Hobbies, wife, kids?
Yeah, so I've got a wonderful wife, and I've got 4 amazing kids. I've got 2 in college, and I've got a just finished junior year and just finished freshman year, 3 boys and a girl. So a lot of sports for the boys, and we've actually, for us, COVID has been a wonderful experience for all of us. We've got to spend more time than we ever have before together. I've got friends that had the opposite experience to me, that it was, they got cabin fever and they were at each other's throats, and I don't connect with that, because we just really had so much better interaction, so much more time together, and I cherished every moment of it. So it's been a blessing for us. We love that everything's getting back to normal, but I think that we definitely benefited personally in our relationships through that than we ever did before. So we got a couple of pets. We got a cat and a little Boston Terrier dog, and my wife is in sales in dental pharma sales.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. David, what would you say is probably the best piece of advice you've ever either received or given someone?
So, I've received a whole lot more good advice than I've given. So that's probably a lot easier to pick from. But I think one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was never stop being grateful. And because none of us get where we are on our own, and we just get so much help along the way. There's so many amazing people along the way that kind of pave the road for us. And from parents to friends to colleagues to bosses to mentors to just people you admire that you may not have ever met. That we are a culmination of our experiences and our knowledge, and the people that impact our lives get us where we are. And so, just staying grateful every day for, those other people and the things that they've done to impact you and help you along your way is probably one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever had.
Cool. Awesome. Love it. So, not to get political, but to get philosophical, let's talk a little bit about something here that's kind of like a little bit personal for Kyle and I. Like we believe a lot in like the Stoic philosophy of things, where there's virtues around courage and justice and temperance, and the last piece being wisdom. So you live in a highly intentional vein of the business, CX. Everything that you do is intentional, has discernment. For the CX professional out there, drop, if you will, some wisdom for us around CX.
Well, CX is really about people. And I think that for me, a huge part of customer experience and psychology, it's really understanding what drives people, what makes people happy, what makes people upset. And really kind of just understanding and connecting with people. And, a huge part of what I've found through the years of doing this is there's a lot of outside CX stuff you can pull from to really understand really how to create a great CX strategy. And so really just it's all about people. It's all about helping them with their needs, helping them with their wants. And, that really for me drives everything, because then we get creative with how we deliver that experience, right? That's kind of the art form around this is the how, but you have to first understand the what. And so really, I think understanding people is where any great CX strategy should start. Understanding your customers, understanding what their needs are, understanding what they are and aren't getting today, that is, will help them. And, and one of the interesting things we saw through COVID is, I warned my people when COVID first hit, be aware there's a lot of people that are going to be going through a lot of hard times, and there's a potential that you could get a lot of upset people because they're just feeling so much stress about everything right now. There's just so many different stressors. And what I found was our CSAT increased through COVID. And the biggest reason why is because when people are going through difficult times, when people are stressed out, when people have all of these things happening, if there's somebody there that is helping them, that is working through all of that as well to help them, and make sure they're getting everything that they need, there's a huge amount of appreciation in that. Mm-hmm. And we got some of the most appreciative comments we've ever seen, period, through COVID, because the fact there was so much gratitude that we pivoted immediately. We didn't have any downtime for our support teams. We went remote in one day. We were there at full capacity through the whole thing. We just got so much gratitude from our customers, and it was kind of counter to what I feared. But really understanding that human element of it, that when they're getting help through that, then they're really appreciative. It was a huge eye opener for me, even though when I reflect back on it, I'm like, yeah, well, that totally makes sense. That's just people. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well done.
Well, yeah, no, this has been a wonderful chat, David. We appreciate you being on DBX. Where can people find you and connect with you further?
Well, probably the best place is on LinkedIn. My last name is spelled a little bit weird. It's Collyer, but you certainly can find me in LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to connect with me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, David.
Thanks so much to both of you.
How much clearer does the mission become?
When you simplify it, it's so easy.
Yeah.
Every business ever get customers.
Keep customers. Yeah.
The end. There's a lot more to it, but yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for joining our business class, Business 101. You have a full semester of credit in 30 seconds. That's velocity.